there's a lot of the old veterans from World War II were still living at that time. They were all talking about things, and Irvin was right next to me. He's always teasing, you know. So the old guys were sitting there, and then he turns his head back to me, and he said, "Sonny, remember when I met you over in the big one?" And those old guys just went off, you know. "What do you mean the big one?" But, you know, Irvin's always teasing, you know. He's always teasing all the time there, too. So I just want to think about, you know, those stories there, too. And Irvin has been on the tribal court here a year prior to that. I was in 1985, when he asked me to become part of the court. And so that's what I have been doing. So in these last 25 years, I have seen the court evolve in a lot of different settings, and specifically here on Bad River. And so I've seen it evolved, and I've seen how the community has looked at it, and also in other tribal communities, and seen how it has evolved. And we talk about the issue about sovereignty, and taking a look at what is sovereignty, and taking a look at how it parallels with treaty rights, and it has a sense of empowerment, the individual sovereignty as individuals. And we're starting to see more and more of that. And the tribal courts are part of the process of taking a look at, you know, the tribal courts and all the decisions that have gone on. And tribal courts are, at least to the point now, people see tribal courts much differently today in 2009 than they did in 1985. You know, they have evolved on a much greater, and people look at the court differently too. And so we've taken on more responsibilities in tribal court. And that has to do with our growth, you know, how we feel about ourselves and our ability to do things on our own, and our ability to be able to make our own decisions rather than having the surrogate parent come in, which is basically the Bureau of Indian Affairs, you know, to run our affairs. Basically, that we can start to do this ourselves. With Indian self-determination, we started coming into play. The tribes basically can make their own determination about where they're going to go and what they're going to do. It also spills over to a lot of other different areas. As we start to feel more comfortable about ourselves as tribal people, we start to be able to believe that we can do other different things too. We start to see things. And I think when you take a look at the sovereignty and the cultural self-confidence, we no longer just sort of look at our toes and kind of walk meekly, that you start to be able to look around and start to say, you know, there are many things that I can do. There are many things that we can do, and you go ahead and try those particular things. And you start to see things when you need to work on. And that's what has been happening in the last 40 years. In the last 40 years now, we've seen a whole generation that has now grown up since the late 1960s. A whole generation of children have grown up. And I was just talking to a few individuals and saying that even powwows, even on this community, there are children on this particular community as well as other reservations, tribal communities. If you talk about powwows, they say, "That was been here as long as I've known, since I was a little kid. You know, I've always been here. My mom and dad went to powwows, and I've always been here." What about language? You know, there's always been some kind of language program. There's nothing wrong with learning the language. With their sweat lodges, their ceremonies, you know, that's just part of almost everyday part of their life now. They don't think about it that much. I mean, they do, but they've always just assumed that it's been here. There's a whole process of history prior to that time when, you know, it just wasn't here. You know, people were moving away from it. You know, we talked about the loss of language this morning. You know, as part of the process, that we become disempowered by the historical process. And by disempowered, we didn't do those particular things. But there are many individuals that did maintain and keep many things that has formed a solid base. Because they kept those seeds, they were able to germinate later on. And those seeds have germinated into a lot of different areas now. And they're still germinating. Our children are still allowing that sprout of all the different cultural knowledge in the ways that they live their life. They're still going on. Those things are starting to sprout now more and more. And we got a generation of children now who are probably in their late 30s, or coming up to early 40s now, who are, this whole generation now have grown up. These things are always been here to them. They've always been here. There really hasn't been a system to put that down real strong like it was before. It's still here, it's still occurring, but not as strong as it was before. They've always been there. And these individuals are now coming into power, and they are going to be coming into power, and every year they're going to be coming more and more. The older generation, again, you know, as we start to get older, this new generation is coming in, and they have a different way of seeing things. They've always been here. This has always been part of their life. And I like to encourage those individuals that, you know, there was a foundation set. You know, they need to also then as Buckle was talking about, you know, that they have responsibility again to maintain that. And it's our responsibility as we get older to also maintain it also, to do those things, to teach them what they need to know, you know, about the life, because that's how we've always done that. We've always had our older people teach younger people and put them into positions and get them to teach, get them to do specific things. And so that's our responsibility to be able to do that. And we start doing more and more of that, and that's occurring more and more, and that's in creating this sense of empowerment. And by empowerment, you know, we have that feeling, that ability that we can do these types of things. And so I was thinking about that with tribal courts, they have moved in that direction, and they've also been part of this offshoot, you know, of various types of legal as well as cultural awareness. You know, they have spread out to all of our individual family and communities, and many individuals are doing their part in many different ways. And they're all contributing to the whole, which is this revitalization, the maintenance of our culture. And that's basically what many of our people are doing today. And we need to do more and more, you know, of that for this next generation to come. We need to spend a lot of time on that. When we think about, as mentioned about just some of the other judges, I was thinking about Judge Barber this morning in Irv. We were on an appeals court in Lac du Flambeau. And Judge Barber was sort of the sage of all the tribal judges from LCO. And he was the oldest one. And we were on appeals court there. And Jerry K. Allen at that time, when Tom was the judge in Lac du Flambeau. And so we were in the judges' chambers, and we were working on an appeal in Lac du Flambeau there. And Jerry said, "What do you want guys for lunch?" So we kind of said what we wanted for lunch. And then she said, "Well, I'll ring you when I'm bringing it back there." So she called up and she said, "I got you guys food here." So want to bring it back now? And Judge Barber said, "Oh, wait a minute." He said, "I'll tell you when to come in and bring it back here. We're involved in an important decision here." And so we waited, and then Judge Barber had a tie. So he pulled his tie out and had Irvin come over there, and Judge Barber mussed up his head, his hair, kind of unbuttoned his shirt. And he had Irvin come over and kind of grab him by the necktie and kind of lean over him. And then he was waiting for me, and then he said, "Well, tell her to come in now." So when she came in, Irv had a hold of Judge Barber by the tail, by the necktie, and his hair was all messed up. And she looked in there, and she said, "We're discussing a point issue right here. We'll be done in a minute here." Jerry K. had that food. He just looked at us real quickly. So Judge Barber there, he was still joking, and Irv played right into that whole process there too. But, you know, those things, as we evolve as tribal judges, we've expanded, and tribal courts have expanded more and more and continue to take on more and more roles. And that's what we see as our children expanding and doing more, that sense of empowerment. And we're doing more of those types of things. And once we experience this sense of cultural knowledge, this cultural self-confidence, this how we feel about ourselves, then we start to do more of those types of activities. We start taking on many, many things and trying more things and learning more things, and because of that, it benefits our children. And we're finding more and more of those types of things happening, even like today. There are still a lot of environmental things that will sort of impede us from doing that, you know, that will prevent, or trying to prevent us from doing those types of things. But as we start to develop that personal resolve, you know, that we can do these things, you know, we can stand up to these things, we can endure those things. And the people, for example, with all the treaty rights, you know, I was thinking with Judge Molson and Tom, when he'd always go down to the boat landings, you know, and he'd walk right into the crowd. You know, he's taking his pictures, you know. I always think about that. We went down to testify, you know, in Madison in Judge Crabb's court.